I've been spending this last little bit of time trying to get everybody to get to know a little bit about me. And so one of the things I talked about is that in practice, I work in a relief capacity. And so what crossed my mind is that probably not all of you do that. And maybe you've hired relief vets, maybe you don't love relief vets. There are lots of opinions about that. We're not going to necessarily go into that right now, but I thought I would bring up what I see as the top sort of 5 to 6 things that are sort of quirky about being a relief veterinarian that you may or may not have ever considered if you've not been in that situation. So the first one I'll say is that, like, I almost never know the address or the phone number of a place that I'm going. And so what I mean by that is, like, I know where I'm going to check into work for the day. But if I'm calling a client or calling a lab, I need to give the name and the location of a practice. I'm often like looking around by the phone to see, is there something that actually tells me the phone number of this practice, or I'm quickly pulling up the website. And so that's sort of funny, right? Those of you that are in your practice on a day-to-day, you absolutely know your clinic's phone number. I probably don't. And so that's just kind of a little disadvantage, but also kind of a funny thing of being a relief doctor. You also, kind of related, have a second thing, which is a ton of logins to a ton of different practice management systems. So, like, I know Clinic X has AVMA, and I know that my password there is this, and I know that Clinic Y has Cornerstone, and I know that my login there is this. And so those are the things that, like, you don't necessarily consider, that you have to keep track of multiple sets of logins. And so on the back end, I kind of have a little cheat sheet for myself of, like, who's the practice manager, who is the person that's going to have access to the control medications if I need them, what are the codes for the safe if it exists that I need to get to, or the access code to get in and out of the building or set an alarm. Like, those are things that, again, if you're in the same practice over and over, you sort of see those things on a recurring basis, and that's very, like, totally just in the back of your mind. You never have to think about that twice. I really have to think about those things, and so keeping them in an organized way has helped me. Outside of those things, those 2 things, I mentioned this a little bit the other day, is that you do tend to have an opportunity, or at least I have in more than one occasion, had the opportunity to give my own patient a second opinion from my opinion at another practice. And so it's a little awkward. And then, of course, the weird thing is, like, does the client recognize you? Does the patient recognize you? You know, when you saw it a week ago and then you're seeing it a week later in a different practice, how do you approach that? Do you say something to the client? Maybe they're just, you know, looking to price shop a little bit, and so they want to get an opinion from another practice before they move forward with the surgery. And so it can be a little bit awkward. So I just thought that is kind of a funny thing about being a relief doctor that you may not deal with on your regular basis. 1 or 2 other things I wanted to mention. One I think is kind of funny, and at least I have found a lot of joy in the ability to, like, leave what I call a little nugget behind. And so I often am in practices and I will see them do things, or, like, a process will look like a certain way. And we all come with our own preconceptions and our biases of, like, why does the practice do it this way? And it's really easy to just assume foul intent, or assume that, you know, they don't know any better, or XYZ, right? It's really easy to kind of fall into that judgment perspective. What I find myself doing is, even though my first reaction might be like, ooh, that seems a little strange to me, help me understand that, I often ask the practice, hey, tell me why we do it that way. And so then I sort of understand, like, this is the process of how they're doing it. And in relation to that, I often get an opportunity to say something like, hey, have you ever tried this process? Or have you ever considered using this? And sometimes people are like, oh, I never did think of that, but I'm absolutely doing it now. And so these little nuggets for me are, you're not making, like, a giant process change, right? Like, it's not like you're overhauling the management or anything, but you may get to do a little teachable moment with the team, or with another doctor, or again with somebody at the front desk, and teach them something that they may have not thought of before, or may have not seen before. And so then for me, the fast forward of that is, you come back in 6 months, or, you know, a few months, or whatever that looks like, and the practice is still doing that thing. Like, that for me is like, oh, that's kind of cool, right? Like, there's no big hurrah that, like, hey, Dr. Quammen showed us this, but it is just really nice to sort of leave the little piece behind and then come back later and see it still there. So that's been really rewarding for me. And then I would say the last thing for me is, like, how do you help, like, normalize with clients that, especially, like, you're the person that they've probably never met before. Like, every day I am meeting new clients and I'm meeting new patients. and I'm often meeting new staff members. And so how do you kind of make that typical for them, right? And you don't always know what the process in a practice is going to be. And so for me, one of the things I will frequently say is, I'm in a room, I'll examine a patient and say, hey, I think we have, you know, let's say a pyoderma. Here are the things that I think we should consider doing. I'll sort of talk about, like, there's a few ways we can administer this medicine, but like what I need to do is go shopping, because I'm a doctor every day. I'm just not a doctor in this building every day. And so what that looks like for me is I need to go see what's available in the pharmacy. And maybe after you've been there a few times, you kind of know that a bit better. But I do think it's a little bit disarming for the clients that they're like, oh, right, like you are a doctor, you do practice every day, you're just not the doctor that I see every day. And so the backup to that in my mind is like, you've got to have 3 plans, right? What is the plan of ideal, what I would love? What can I live with, and what can I like manage if I need to? And worst case scenario, right? Like if they absolutely don't have the thing you want, do you script it, or do you call it in, or, you know, something of that nature, or find an alternate? And so those are kind of a few things that I just think are sort of unique. I run into them pretty regularly. I wonder about those of you that are doing relief work as well. Do you have these sort of interactions? Am I the magnet for these kind of oddball things? And for those of you that are in a position where you're hiring veterinarians as relief or working alongside them, have you had that opportunity to see people like, oh, I've forgotten what my login is here, or I've forgotten that person's name, I have to ask for like the 18th time, or hearing those funny little one-liners of like, hey, I got to go shopping in the pharmacy because I don't know what is available here. And so those are just things that I think are kind of unique and kind of interesting, and I thought I would share those with you. I hope you're finding some of this interesting. I am cautiously optimistic that you're learning a little bit about me, and I would love to know more about you. So please share. Tell me the things that are interesting to you. What do you want from a veterinary leader? What can I help to sort of bring forward to this profession that we all love so dearly? So please reach out. You can find me at jenquammen.com. I'm on all the social platforms. This is a little bit longer video than I would normally do, but if you've stuck with me for this, I appreciate it, and hope you're having a wonderful rest of your day, and you know, hope to see you somewhere in the real world or in the virtual world. So with that, I will say farewell to you and have a wonderful rest of your day.